The Legend of Zelda. If there was ever a game that did so much right so early on in the history of Nintendo console gaming, this is it. Yes, it shows its age, but to me, the challenge and the gameplay still holds up extremely well. And it's one game that's inspired countless imitators. As many of you know now, this was the first cartridge game to include a save feature. The cartridge had a button battery in order to store memory so you can put the game down and resume gameplay whenever you want. This was the first time that this technology was used in a cartridge, and it has become a common feature in adventure, role-playing games, and sports games for years to come. However, the game is now 28 years old and those batteries are failing. So for the purpose of this review, I actually been playing the Legend of Zelda Collector's Edition promo disc for the GameCube. It's a very accurate port on here, complete with the slowdown when the screen gets a little too busy, just minus a lot of the flickering that certain enemies would do. My only real gripe isn't with the game, it's actually with playing it on a GameCube controller. Something about games where you're using an analog stick for a game that was never intended for one feels a little weird to me. Also, this controller is a little bit janky, and every time I get an analog stick that seems to be crapping out, it always seems to drift to the left. Needless to say, that just made things a little bit more tricky. Being an early game of this type, the plot is fairly limited. The game itself explains the story in an opening scroll full of poor English translation, which was all fixed for the GameCube version. But in short, Zelda's been kidnapped, collect the Triforce pieces, and beat the big bad guy Ganon. I feel that Zelda's a game that's all about the player. You're dropped into this world, and you can pretty much go about reaching your end goal of ultimately facing Ganon and collecting the Triforce pieces in any way you see fit, with the game never holding your hand. If you want to explore and hunt monsters in the overworld before tackling any of the dungeons, you can do that. If you want to equip any and every item you can purchase or find before taking the dungeons on, you can do that too. If you want to take the dungeons on in an order that's different than the intended, go for it. For some reason, I always forget where the second dungeon is, and even now, I often play the third dungeon right after the first. It's also quite common for people to hit the 7th dungeon before the 6th, because Dungeon 6 can be a bit of a pain in the ass. This game rewards exploration and keeps exploration interesting by having a variety of enemies and even variations in the landscapes. Certain dungeon rooms require little tricks to play, little secrets to unlock to get the different sections. This spills out into the overworld with the Lost Rocks and Lost Wood sections. There are also a lot of secret caves where items and other surprises can be found as well. While we're at it, those last 3 dungeons, they're pretty well hidden too. Most of these secrets are fairly common knowledge to any of us who grew up playing the game. A few were included with the game in a pamphlet which unfolded to reveal a map showing most of the overworld. Even the instruction manual revealed a lot more than simple gameplay, but many of those secrets were found by most of us by word of mouth or even trial and error. Playing again for this review, it was amazing to me how much of the game was like second nature to me. All the heart containers and many other secrets. Some of the dungeons still gave me trouble, but that's where the bulk of the challenge lied in this game to begin with. To reinforce how much control over the game the player has, this is probably the earliest instance on a console game where I can think of to have the player name the protagonist anything he wants. For many of us, this was also the game that introduced a lot of RPG elements, and that video games don't have to be all about going from point A to point B. This is something a lot of Zelda-style games, and even later games in the Zelda series, has forgotten. This is another game that gets a very, very high recommendation from me. Yes, it shows its age. Yes, there are a number of parts to it that aren't exactly intuitive, but to me the gameplay and the challenge still hold up extremely well. You'll find this game on Virtual Console, Game Boy Advance, GameCube. Also, you'll find it on a number of people's top 5 lists of best NES games, not just ones that I did, and come to think of it, I should be getting back into doing those. Hope you've enjoyed this review, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.